last class, we're about to start the digestive system. Because remember, we started talking about the biological system, and we did the skeletal system and the muscular system. And now we're going to get into the digestive system. So let me share my screen. Okay. So this morning, we're going to talk about the digestive system of poultry. And you generally refer to the digestive system of birds. And since we are specifically talking about chickens and turkeys this time, although it applies to some of the other types of poultry as well, they are referred to as non-ruminant or monogastric. Who can tell me what that means?
They have one stomach.
Okay, anything else? Okay, before you answer that, anybody else? What's the difference between a non-ruminant and a ruminant stomach?
A ruminant stomach has 4 compartments that each do a different process of the digestion process.
Okay, very good. Whereas the non-ruminant, they just have one. Okay. The reason I said that whoever was answering to wait, it says in the monogastric animal, there's very little space for microorganisms to help in digestion as they do in ruminants. Okay. So in ruminants that have the 4 compartment stomach, they have to depend on microorganisms in different parts of the stomach to break down the food material in order to produce the volatile fatty acids that they need for energy and other processes in the body. Now, in monogastric animals, they only have one compartment, so they have to depend on enzymes that are secreted in the digestive tract in order to break down complex food materials. So whereas in the ruminants, they depend on microorganisms, in the non-ruminants or monogastrics like poultry, they depend on enzymes that are secreted in the digestive tract to break down their food molecules. So that's one major difference between the monogastric and the ruminant, or the non-ruminant and the ruminant. That's a major difference, or that's a major difference. So is that clear? Before I even get to that, just so that you guys, when we talk about this later, in a certain part of the digestive system of poultry, when we get to that part in the ceca, there are like very minute number of microorganisms there, but not enough to be part of the major digestive process. But if, say, for example, some type of roughage gets into that area before it's digested, then some of those very minute amount of microorganisms there will be able to digest that. But it's not very significant in the whole process. Is that clear? About the difference in the digestive process of ruminants and non-ruminants. Okay. Since I'm not getting any response, I'm going to assume that it is clear. Okay, so this is both of these are diagrams of the digestive system of the chicken. And just imagine what I wanted, the way, actually this picture is this actually came out of a chicken. And what the person who did this, which I have it in the hard copy of this PowerPoint where it came from this lady in Kentucky. What they did, they took the digestive system out, and just imagine the chicken. This is from the head all the way to the tail, to the cloaca or the tail part of the chicken. So what they did is kind of laid it out. They just opened it up and laid it out. So this is what the entire digestive tract of the chicken looks like. So if you were supposed to go, like if we had gone to the lab, to the farm, and I opened up a chicken, once we opened it up and removed the digestive system, this is what it would look like. So we start from the head, where you have the mouth and the beak, because remember, they need their beak to pick up feed, right? That's how they get the food into their mouth. It then goes down the esophagus. It gets into the crop, which we're going to take each of these and discuss in detail, but I just want to see where the different parts are located. Gets into the crop, and you'll see what the function of that is in a minute. Then gets into the proventriculus, which is the main stomach of the bird. Then into the gizzard or ventriculus, because I know some of you may know the gizzard or eat it. Then the small intestines start here, where the first part of the small intestine is the duodenum. So this is the duodenal loop right here. So inside of this loop, the duodenal loop, you're going to find the pancreas. And later, we're going to talk about what the purpose of the pancreas. So the small intestine starts with the duodenum, which is the first part of the small intestines. And within the duodenum, the duodenal loop is the pancreas. Then it goes on, the small intestine continues all the way down to okay, you're not going to see it in the picture, but you know that the small intestine has 3 parts, right? The duodenum, which is the first part, the jejunum, which is all of this part up to right here. And there's a little thing there. I'm not maybe when you look at your screen, you can see that the Merkel's diverticulum, that's this little thing right here. And then everything from here, it gets here to the where the cecum, this section, juncture right here where the ceca is. This is the ileum. So you have the duodenum, the jejunum up here, and then from here to the junction of the ceca, you have the ileum. Now these 2 pouches right here are the cecum. So 1 is cecum and 2 is ceca. And we're going to learn what happens there. And then right after the junction of the ceca and the ileum, where the ileum ends and the ceca is, right, this section right here is the large intestine. And then that continues into the cloaca, and then everything is excreted out of the vent, which is the opening to the ceca. Now, in here, you notice I have the spleen, gallbladder, and liver. So these are like secondary organs that are part of the that are involved in the digestive process. Let me say it that way. So you're going to learn how these parts are involved in the digestive process. So this is the diagram of the digestive system with the different parts, and we're going to take each part and tell you its function in the digestive process. Okay, any question about the diagram before we move on?
What did you say was like the part in the small intestines, like
the different parts?
The 2 other ones in the
okay,
middle.
So the first part here, which is named right here, is the duodenum, or because it forms a loop, they call it the duodenal loop as well. And within this there's a little soft spongy thing within that loop, that is the pancreas. And then it continues on, and this other part, the second part up here, and this part is called the Merkel's diverticulum. This is where all of this part is the jejunum, Jejunum. And then the rest of it from here all the way to the junction where the ceca starts here, this is the ileum. So the duodenum, jejunum, and ileum composes the small intestines. Okay, any other questions before? Now we're going to take each part and say what what role it plays in the digestive process. Oh, this is just another diagram from a different point of view, but it's the same thing. They just laid it out a little different and may have add a little more, some other labels. Like we know that this is the esophagus, but they call it pre-crop. Just the section that is before the crop, which, you know, we know that. So this is the esophagus, the crop.
Wrong place, wrong time type shit.
Okay, so this is just another diagram of the digestive system. Okay, so we said we're going to take each part and we're going to go through the parts so that you see what role it plays in the digestive process. So we know that chickens do not have teeth. We know they do not have lips, soft palate, or cheek. Therefore, they cannot chew. So if they do not have all of those parts in the mouth, they cannot chew. Therefore, the beak is important. Now, you remember when you guys were doing definitions and we're talking about the debeaking machine, and some people, and although some people still said it in their definition, that it is used to remove the beak. And I said, you need to be more specific to say that it removes a portion of the beak, because really what you cut is just the tip, the sharp point of the beak. If you say it removes the beak, then that's kind of technically not correct, because if you remove the beak, then they cannot eat. So it's just a portion of the beak that is removed. And the upper and lower mandible forms the beak, which is what that is. And we know that the beak is what is used to pull food into the mouth. And they do have their tongue is very sharp and dagger-like. Actually, it is very narrow and straight. That's why they call it dagger-like, and it has a rough surface. So the mouth functions in prehension. This is just a technical term for just them being able to grasp the food with the beak and then swallowing the food, which is the start of deglutition, which is swallowing. So that's the purpose of the mouth, is just to grasp the food and then swallow it. Very little digestion occurs in the mouth, because as we say, they do not have anything there than just to pull the food in with the teeth, and then it is swallowed and goes down the esophagus. So you already saw the entire system, but this is just another picture showing you the beak again. The esophagus, this kind of open up the neck portion to show you the esophagus coming from down the neck region here, leading into the crop. Now, saliva serves to lubricate the food, just like in any species. That's what the saliva does once you get food into the mouth. And it contains this enzyme, alpha amylase, which breaks down starch and glycogen, and also serve as buffering capacity when the food gets down to the stomach. Because remember, all this acid stuff will be secreted in the stomach. So this enzyme, the alpha amylase, breaks down the starch and glycogen, and then the saliva also serves as a buffer when the food gets into the stomach, because once it leaves here, it's going to end up in the stomach. Now, the esophagus, now that the food is grasped by the beak and enters the mouth, it's going to pass down the esophagus. Another name for the esophagus is the gullet. So if you're reading and you see them talking about the gullet, you know it's the same. It's used interchangeable with esophagus. And this is a muscular tube extending from the pharynx to the cardia of the stomach. So the esophagus is going to come from the pharynx in the throat and then goes down right till it gets to the stomach. You have nerves and muscles in the esophagus that results in peristaltic movement of the food bolus toward the proventriculus. So once the food is swallowed, it is that muscular action in the esophagus that pushes the food down into the stomach. So that's what the esophagus serves in this case, as it relates to digestion. Is that clear?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so this is just another diagram again of, you know, all these pictures are real pictures of real chicken. So although we may not have the chicken in our hands doing it, you can actually see. This is the head of the chicken. This is the neck. So this is the esophagus going down here. And this is the crop. So once the esophagus ends, then you have the crop. And I'll tell you what the crop is in a minute. Okay, here we are. So the crop forms from an outpouching of the esophagus. So when at the end of that portion of the esophagus, when it says outpouching, it forms like, it's like a, you know what a pouch looks like, or like a little bulb pouchy thing. It forms at the bottom of the esophagus. You have this pouch forming, and that serves as a storage organ for the food that is being swallowed. So say the chicken is eating a whole, they'll eat for maybe 2 minutes. All the food is not digested at the same time. So some of it is held up or stored in the crop and continually feeds into the rest of the digestive system as, you know, the digestion. It's a continuous process. So not very little digestion is going to occur in the crop because, as you say, it serves mostly as a storage organ to store the food as the digestion process takes place. Is that clear enough? Okay. So we mentioned the proventriculus. If you have your diagram, you remember where the proventriculus is. Now, this is actually the true stomach of the bird. It's also referred to as the glandular stomach. You can also call it the true stomach, but the scientific proper name is proventriculus. So this is the true stomach of the bird. Now, remember I said, when we said that the saliva kind of serves as a buffer. When it gets to, the food gets to the stomach, it's gonna meet upon these gastric juices, which are more acidic. So the saliva coming in that coats the food is gonna kind of serve as a buffer, so that once these gastric juices are secreted, it serves to, it forms a balance between, because it has to have the right pH for proper digestion, and you do not have, you know, digestive issues. So once the food passes through and gets into the proventriculus, gastric juices are secreted. For example, hydrochloric acid and the enzyme pepsin, which aids in protein digestion. But although it is the true stomach of the bird, not a lot of digestion occurs here. It just these gastric juices that are formed, that are required for some of the breakdown of the food material, they are secreted here in the proventriculus. Once that happens, then the food, that ingested food, that it's going to continue along the digestive tract. It passes rapidly and very little digestion occurs there. So the food gets there into the proventriculus, these gastric juices are formed and mixes with that food material that's coming in, and protein digestion starts, it just starts the process. And then the food continues through the proventriculus. Now, anybody here eats the gizzard of the chicken? I know lots of people do.
I do.
Okay. I know it's kind of chewy and very hard to chew, but some people, depending on how it is cooked, it can be good. And this is also referred to as a muscular stomach. So those who eat it realize, can understand why it's referred to as a muscular stomach. It has very strong muscles. And these muscles are strong because they are needed to grind and mix the feed. That is why you know that we said the chicken does not have teeth, you know that. So because it is so strong and helps to grind up the food, to increase the surface area for the enzymes and all these other things to work on it, they refer to it as the organ of mastication. So it's just like when you eat and you use your teeth to chew the food, into tiny portions so that you can swallow it and for digestion to occur. Birds do not have it, but the gizzard kind of serves something that similar purpose in terms that the muscles kind of crush and grinds the feed. And this is aided by grit and gravitating with the feed. So especially those that are free range, when they're eating off the ground, they pick up all kinds of dirt and any grainy stuff that's on the ground, any kind of grit, or if gravel is there, they take it in with the food. When all this gets to the gizzard, all that grit and gravel and stuff that they eat along with the food helps the muscles of the gizzard to also grind up the food. Now, those that are inside and not outside, there are times, depending on the ingredients you add to the diet to make up the diet of the bird, some people there's a special kind of sand that you can add to the feed, and that kind of help the gizzard when it's grinding the feed. So those that are the birds that are raised indoors will have that opportunity, and those that are outside is just out there naturally, and they can use that to help with grinding the food. And you know that the more the food is ground, it's going to increase the surface area to allow more complete enzymatic digestion. When you have big pieces, you do not have enough surface area for the enzyme to act. So that's the purpose of the gizzard now, is to use the strong muscles it has to grind and mix the feed. This increases the surface area, allowing the enzymes to do what they do, to do the enzymatic digestion. Okay, any questions before we get to the next section?
No.
Okay. Okay, so everybody know this is just a diagram showing the gizzard and the proventriculus. And I'm sure most of you have seen this already, especially those who eat the gizzard. Now, when you open up the gizzard, it has this yellow lining. So before you eat it, this lining is removed. And it's very easy to remove. If you actually see a gizzard, you just peel it off and it just comes right off. So you actually do not eat this yellow portion. This is just the lining of it. So when you peel it off, you see how you can actually see the muscles, and they're really tough muscles. Yes, Miss Faulkner Taylor.
Just going back to the true stomach, I just had a question in terms of just how that being the true stomach and then the gizzard really working in the food or working down the food, I would rather say. How does that correlate in terms of being the true stomach? I don't know if I'm like asking a question to where it's understandable. Kind of like, I'm sorry.
I think I know what you mean, because it is called a true stomach. However, it says that very little digestion occurs there.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's what you meant. Or because the main purpose of this, you know that all these enzymes like HCl, as I mentioned, and then you have pepsin, and those things, they're secreted in the stomach. So the stomach is very important. If it doesn't go through that process, if those secretions does not occur, those gastric juices to start the digestive process, then nothing is going to happen. So that's why it is very important, because those juices, and those juices are not secreted anywhere else.
So they're not transferred to the gizzard. They only stay within those juices, like kind of like how our bodies have acid.
Okay, so when these acids, when these juices form, they actually mix with the food. So it's everything that is secreted along the way mixes with the food. So when the food passes into the gizzard, all of that is already mixed in.
Okay.
You kind of see that?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mhm. Okay, now we get to the small intestines. This is the primary organ of digestion and absorption. So this is where the bulk of everything happens. But if the first part didn't happen, nothing is going to happen here. So they refer to the small intestines as a primary organ of digestion and absorption. And when I was showing you the diagram, I said that it is made up of the duodenum and then the jejunum and the ileum, right? So those are the three parts of the small intestine. Now, I said I was going to explain the functions of some of those secondary portions of the digestive system and their involvement in the digestive process. Now, the digestive enzymes and bicarbonate are secreted in the pancreas. Remember I said that pancreas are located within that loop of the duodenum? Well, the pancreas is responsible for secreting some digestive enzymes, some bicarbonate that is gonna get involved in that are involved in the digestive process as well. And then the liver is what secretes bile, and the bile is then goes to the gallbladder where it's stored before it then goes on to, let me see what I have on the other slide. Okay, I did talk about each of them separately. So within the duodenum, you have the pancreas, which secretes digestive enzymes and bicarbonate from the pancreas, which is located within that duodenum, within the loop. And bile from the liver, which then goes to the gallbladder. Then we're going to talk about that in a minute. But remember I mentioned Merkel's diverticulum. This is where you already know where the duodenum is because it's a loop. So that's easy to identify. But some first students, and that's why I actually added this picture. How do you know that? Sometimes you just look at the whole, if you take the digestive system out and look at it directly from the bird, unless you know what to look for, you cannot tell the jejunum different from the ileum. But once you look, you will actually see this little knob right here. You will see this, and this will tell you where the jejunum ends and where the ileum starts. So the time you get a chance, if you're killing a chicken and you take out the digestive tract, just look at the small intestines and you will actually see this little knob right here. And this marks the end of the jejunum and the start of the ileum. So if you can picture the intestines, although you don't have the chicken right in front of you, you can kind of visualize what it looks like and how you would be able to tell what part is what part of the small intestines. Okay, so I said I was gonna talk about this, although I mentioned it, but we already said that the pancreas is located within the loop of the duodenum. And I keep repeating it so that you guys can remember that. So, and I said that the pancreas secretes these juices, these enzymes, these pancreatic juices and bicarbonate and stuff that is gonna get involved in the digestive process. So you have a pancreatic duct that leads from the pancreas to the small intestines, to the rest of the small intestines that's going to continue the digestive and absorption process. So these juices that are secreted in the pancreas, they are used to neutralize the acid secretions coming from the proventriculus. So you remember I said that all these gastric juices are acidic that are secreted in the proventriculus. This then mixes with the food and then it passes along. So these juices, especially the bicarbonates and other pancreatic juices that are secreted in the pancreas, Those also are used to neutralize some of these acid secretions that are coming from the proventriculus in that food bolus that is coming down from the proventriculus, and that mixes with it. And these secretions contain enzymes that hydrolyzes mostly proteins and starches. That are, because remember, it is this food bolus coming all along from the start, and it changes every time it passes through a different section because you have different secretions being added to this food material. Now the liver, gallbladder, and bile duct. You know, okay, before we know that the liver is the largest organ in the body, right? We're talking about organ. So the liver is, and it is very important in nutrient metabolism and storage. Bile is produced in the liver, and then it is transported to the small intestines by way of the bile duct. What is the purpose of bile in terms of and its involvement in the digestion process? Okay. So
Does it involve that absorption?
yes, very good. So it is very important for bile to be secreted, but I'm pointing out, and I'm going to repeat it because I use other previous classes where students make mistake and then try to make sure the next class doesn't make it. Bile is not produced in the gallbladder. It is stored in the gallbladder, but it is produced in the liver. So I just want to point that out so that each year I try to make sure that students don't make, like they make the same mistakes every year. I try to not, prevent them from doing that. So bile is produced in the liver and transported to the small intestines by way of the bile duct. The bile duct on the right lobe of the liver enlarges to form the gallbladder. The bile is then goes by way of the bile duct, gets into the gallbladder, and that's where it's stored. So it's secreted in the liver, travels by way of the bile duct into the gallbladder, and is stored there. Now, the presence of food in the duodenum causes the gallbladder to contract, emptying the bile into the intestine. So that is how the bile now gets in and do what it needs to do. Just the presence of food triggers the gallbladder to release the bile into the intestines. And bile is necessary for proper absorption of fats in the small intestine. So the fatty part inside of that food, whatever type of fat is in the food, that bile is needed for the proper absorption of the fat. So that's what the purpose of bile in the digestive process. Okay, any questions about the bile, where it is secreted, where it's stored, the purpose of it?
Do chickens have a problem with the gallbladder bursting like humans do?
You mean like while they're alive?
Yeah.
Actually, I've never heard. I've never actually heard that. I know that sometimes we are slaughtering and we mistake. And you know that if you're slaughtering the chicken and you accidentally puncture the gallbladder and it touches the rest of the food, you have to get rid of that carcass, right? They say not to eat that. I don't know what the bile will. It's not good for the humans to eat it once it's contaminated with bile. But I've never heard of it rupturing like in humans. If it has happened, I've never heard of it. Maybe that's something we could look up, right? Okay. Other than that, anybody have any questions about bile? Its purpose, where it's secreted, where it's stored, what triggers it to get into the intestines, and what it does, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now we've gone through the whole, from the pick the food up and the different parts of the truck it goes through, where the different juices are secreted and breaks down the food and it gets into the different parts of the system and all that. Now, due to extensive surface area, that means now the food is just like mushy. Let me use that later. A meal can be digested and absorbed in approximately 3 hours in the domestic fowl. So from the moment the food is taken in until it is completely digested and absorbed, it's approximately 3 hours. I think it's the same for humans, 3 or 4 hours, I don't remember. So that's what it is for chicken. So enzymes in the mucosal wall of the intestines continues the digestion process. And we know that the proteins in the food are broken down into amino acids, starches are broken down into simple sugars, and fats are broken down into monoglycerides and fatty acids. So these are the end products of digestion. And then when you later on, when you do more advanced nutrition, you'll know, this is not for this course, you'll know more about these amino acids, the sugars, and the fatty acids and all that. You'll learn a lot more about those later on. But these are the basic end products of digestion. Okay, any questions about this? Okay, so if you do not have any questions, go to the next part. Remember, we mentioned the seeker. We said that one is seek. You remember you have these two blind pouches, and when it's a blind pouches, it means that the end is there. I would have to go back to the picture, but let me go back to it quickly. You see, they do not go anywhere. You notice that they just end here. So it's blind because it's not attached. The ends are not attached to anything. They're just there. So that's it. The cecum is from here to here, and the other one is here to here. The ends does not attach to anything. So that's why it's called a blind pouch. So these are two blind pouches found at the junction of the small and large intestines. So remember, this is the junction here this is the small intestines ending here and the large intestine starting here. And this is the seeker right here. So it says it is found right here at the junction between the small and large intestine. So if you want to know where to find it on the chicken, it's right at that junction. And in some literature or in the text or something, you see they refer to right here as the ileocecal junction, mostly because the ileum, which is this part of the small intestine, ends here and the ceca here, so they call it the ileocecal junction. So you might see that as well, and they're talking about right here. Now, the ceca, now you know what it is. It's usually filled with fecal matter, because remember now you're coming towards the end of the digestive process and you're going to have waste products, right? So it's usually filled with fecal matter. And any water that is remaining in the fecal matter is also reabsorbed there in the cecum or ceca. So they try to get all the water that is available that the chicken can use. That's where it will happen, before the fecal matter is excreted. Also, now you know that it's usually filled with fecal matter. Any remaining water in the fecal matter is reabsorbed here. Now, it serves another function. Remember earlier when I said that because monogastric animals do not use microorganisms to break down food, they only have a one compartment stomach, so they use enzymes instead, which we have talked about. They use enzymes to break down their food. And I said there's a part of the digestive system in chickens that they have a minute amount of microorganisms. This is where you will find that in the ceca. And that's why I say here, also ferment any remaining coarse material. But it is so minute that is not a major part of the whole digestive process, but it does serve a little process, because whatever they can get from whatever food they eat, whatever nutrients, it is important. So although it is small, it is important. Now you get to the large intestines. And this is relatively short, as if you saw in the picture, it's just a very short part of the digestive system. It's only approximately 4 inches long. These are just other names that they use to refer to the large intestines. And the large intestine extends from the end of the small intestines to the cloaca. So it extends from the end of the small intestine, which is right here, down to here. You see how short it is compared to the small intestine? Look how long the small intestine is. And this large intestine is very small, very short. The main function of the large intestine is water resorption, to increase water content of cells and maintain water balance in the bird. So if you notice along, we talk about the and the large intestine, that any water that is remaining in whatever stage in the digestive process is happening, every possible water that is available is going to be absorbed so that cells can have it to use. That's important. That's one of the reasons why it's important that we drink water. It's also very important that all animals and birds, chickens, I know, you cannot let them run out of water at any time. It's important for the digestive process and just to maintain the balance of what the cells need to do their job. It's important. Now the cloaca, if you have ever seen a live chicken, right at the end or the tip of the cloaca is where you find the tail feathers. So the cloaca is kind of right under the tail, right where the tail feathers are. So to give you kind of a picture of where you find it. So this is a bulbous area at the end of the digestive tract. Oh, why didn't I have a picture of it? Okay. This is a common chamber for the digestive, reproductive, and urinary tract discharges. Now, you know that chickens have one external opening, right? So anything that is coming out of the chicken is going to come from that one opening. And that's why the cloaca is referred to as, it is the common chamber for the digestive, reproductive, and urinary tract discharges. So the end product of, the products that will be excreted at the end of the digestive process have to come through that. What's the reproductive? Why would the reproductive process be involved with? What are we talking about when we said it is a common chamber for digestive, reproductive, and urinary? Let's talk about reproductive. How would that be involved?
Because they only have the one chamber of exit, so that's where the eggs would have to come through anyways. Yes.
And also, if you're gonna do AI, artificial insemination, that's where the semen would come from the males. And if you're gonna insert the semen, do the actual insemination, the female, that's the same opening you use to get to the tract, track to insert it. Everything comes out of that one opening. So that's why it's a common chamber. Now, you guys, just to let you know that chickens do not urinate. What they produce is the urine is produced, but urine is discharged into the cloaca, then mixes with the fecal matter and excreted. So the urine is not, they do not have a separate place where urine is, they do not urinate that. But the urine that is formed mixes with the fecal matter and they are excreted together. Anybody ever see, actually look at the chicken droppings? And it looks like it have this little white stuff on it. What do you think that little white stuff is? It actually is part of the excretory thing after the end of digestion occurs. So that little white stuff that you see on the feces of the chicken, that's actually uric acid. That comes out along with the feces. Now, the vent or anus. Now, you have the cloaca, but the actual opening, the external opening that lets everything out through to the outside is referred to as the vent. So you have the cloaca, and then the area, the opening that everything comes out is referred to as a vent. So it is the external opening of the cloaca where waste products and other substances leave the body. And it varies in size in females depending on whether or not she's producing eggs. Mm-hmm. Oh, it's 11:50. Okay, and this is the last slide on this topic anyway. So okay, so okay, so you guys know that Monday's a holiday, right? Just to be sure. So I won't see you guys again until a week from today.